Yo guys, Superior David here, coming at you from the living room because we are sort of in the middle of moving and I already packed up my green screen. But anyways, a few days ago we had a very spicy balance patch that brought with it, some much needed nerfs as well as some very surprising buffs. And we were starting to see like a meta develop over these past few days. So I thought now would be a good time to go over some of the best decks so far, post balance changes that you can use to hit legends. So if all this is sounding good to you, make sure to hit that like button. Also subscribe to the channel if you aren't already because it really helps me out, and of course it makes you very superior. And I guess with that, let's get into these decks. Okay, so first up, we've got the deck that's really dictating the meta right now, and that is Thief Rogue. Now, is this the best deck on this list? I don't think so. I think we're starting to see that Thief Rogue is not the unstoppable juggernaut that it once was in its heyday. But the idea behind this deck, for those who don't know, is that we run the Maestro of the Masquerade so that we start the game as a different class, which means every time we draw a rogue card, it discounts our Wild Pawn Null by 1. And these recently unbuffed Wild Pawn Nulls are just absolute monsters at controlling the early game because, we run the Blackwater Cutlass as well as the SI7 Extortion. So, if we trade one of these in the early game, we get an extra discount on Wild Pawn Null, and that allows you to just like turbo cheat these out like really freaking fast. And then we've also got like other scammy high roll stuff, like the Ajaran Vessel that you can cheat out like on turn 3 or turn 2 with the coin with a preparation. But if that doesn't pan out, that's okay because we've also got the, the Edwin that we can combo with Mr. Smite to, close out the game against like slower decks. Basically what you do here is you play the Edwin and then you immediately shadow step him. And then so every card you play from then on will still buff Edwin even though he's in your hand. And so then, you'll eventually, play him alongside Mr. Smite and just blast your opponent down for a ton of damage. So just really scammy stuff. And overall, I think, again, Thief Rogue is not the unstoppable beast that it was before. I think we're seeing that, without Secret Passage, the deck definitely runs out of steam, but it has like enough, early game scam with the Null and the Ajaran Vessel, as well as the double agent, which I totally glossed over, but it's still pretty good. But it has enough like early game scammage that you can just, like really overwhelm decks before they can get off the ground. So overall, good deck for climbing on ladder. Now to counter all these Thief Rogues, people are turning to a variety of control decks, but I think what we're starting to see is that the best performing one is the Charge Warrior. Basically, the idea behind this deck is, it has wonderful removal like the Shield Shatter as well as the Brawls to deal with those like early game rogue scammy boards that I was just talking about. But we've also got a more proactive way to close out the game with the Captain Galvangar OTK. You play to the front to, ideally twice to discount, your Captain Galvangar, and then you play, Battleground Battlemaster and Faceless Manipulator to copy the Galvangar and just send all that damage to your opponent's face. And that's like ideally what you're working towards, but we've also got, Mr. Smite, and you get some cheap pirates off of Nelly to like close out the game that way. But what truly like turbocharges this deck is the From the Depths. The From the Depths allows you to just pop off with your combo just so much faster, or like sometimes you won't even need like both of the to the fronts because you'll just be discounting like some of your combo pieces naturally with From the Depths. And that I think just makes this Charge Warrior just so formidable on ladder. You could combo up just so much faster now with this deck. And with the rise of like these other like value attrition decks that are very popular, like Naga Hero Power Mage, as well as Curse Warlock, that could sort of like actually like outvalue the Kazakhstan Warrior that was really popular in the past meta. I think we're starting to see like that's why like Charge Warrior just performs so well at the moment. It has this very proactive win condition that you could cheat out just a lot faster to close out the games against some of those more value-oriented decks. So again, Charge Warrior, very strong performer on ladder right now, but it's not a deck without its weaknesses. And this brings us to the deck that might actually be the best deck in the game at the moment, and that is Mech Paladin. Now, Mech Paladin was actually like really held in place by Demon Hunter because, Demon Hunter used to be able to apply like just too much pressure on the Mech Paladins and, would sort of push them off the board before the Mech Paladins could really get going. But with Demon Hunters, no longer to be seen, Mech Paladins have a lot more time to develop and, buff their minions with like Prismatic Jewel Kit, as well as, maybe weave in like a Bannerman or a Seafloor Savior to really start getting those buffs going. And once this deck starts getting, their minions buffed, it becomes so hard for decks to deal with these minions, especially like any control deck, since like most of our minions have Divine Shields. And like if a deck happens to like clear off some Divine Shields, that's okay because again, we got Prismatic Jewel Kit and those will often translate into buffs, but then we can also put more Divine Shields on them with the Bubble Bot and really just snowball hard that way. And I find that this deck just absolutely destroys like any sort of warrior deck, but really just like most control decks due to the Bubble Bot. On top of that, we've also got the Lifeforge Carriel, which it just makes it really hard for like once you get her down, it makes it so hard for other decks to close out the game if they're not running like a Rust Rot Viper because the weapon just mitigates so much damage. So overall, Mech Paladin is an absolute beast on ladder. I haven't even like talked about the radar detector, which is just like amazing for reloading your hand. But again, if you want to win some games, I think Mech Paladin is proving to be very strong. I would expect people to start teching for this matchup more with like the 3-mana silence card and more Rust-Rot Vipers to deal with the Lightforged Carol. But again, this deck is just a beast, especially if you can get that Prismatic Jewel Kit going like ASAP with all the buffs. But I've talked enough about this deck. Let's move it on to the next one. Now, next up, we've got Naga Hero Power Mage, which is a deck much like the Mech Paladin that was held in place by the all the like aggro Demon Hunters before. But with no more Demon Hunters, now Naga Hero Power Mage has a lot more time to set up for these Spitelash Siren combo turns. You play the Spitelash Siren on like turns like 4, 5, and 6, and then you alternate Naga spell to basically just cheat a bunch of mana and just fill up the board, cast a bunch of spells, really powerful stuff. I'm sure we've all seen it on ladder before. And what makes this deck so powerful at the moment is there, like, once you pop off with the Spylash Siren, there really aren't too many decks that can really deal with that kind of wide board. But anyways, I personally prefer the Wildfire version of this deck. I find it to just, it's a bit more straightforward for me, and I personally just enjoy it more. Getting like these Wildfires down onto the Savara, you can really just start cranking up the damage on your hero power, and especially if you can get down Dawngress, you could scale that hero power damage even higher, and basically, you could have like a 2 mana, basically like deal like a Fireball or even like a Pyroblast worth of damage to your opponent's face every turn, and it's absolutely hysterical. So I really enjoy the Naga Hero Power Mage. I think it's definitely, there are some decks that are rising up to start that can deal with the wide board a bit more that I'll talk about later, but I think overall there aren't too many decks that could deal with these Spylash Siren turns. So it's still very much like a formidable deck on ladder at the moment if you're looking to, get some ranks. Now, all of this talk of board-based decks brings us to an archetype that I think is being criminally underplayed on ladder right now, and that is Burn Shaman. Now, again, I was just talking about Mech Paladin as well as Naga Hero Power Mage, but we're starting to see the rise of like Murloc, Warlock, as well as like the new Naga Priest. So a lot more board-based decks on ladder, and Burn Shaman just feasts upon those decks because of the everyone's favorite card, the Snowfall Guardian, that could just keep freezing your opponent's board over and over again, especially because we got the Brilliant Macaw. But then you could also freeze the board with like the Wind Chills off of the Sleepbreaker, or the little 3/4s off of the Wildpaw Caverns. Just a lot of ways to slow down board-based decks. From there, it's just a matter of either like assembling like enough giant Snowfall Guardians, or you eventually like assemble like a wide board, play Bioluminescence to get like a bunch of spell damages, blast your opponent with like a Scalding Geyser, or like Lightning Bolt, or even like a Frostbite. Just really nutty stuff. So if you're looking to farm like some of these board-based decks, definitely consider playing the Burn Shaman, because again, I'm not seeing too much of it, but whenever I queue into it, I'm just like, now I'm not going to be able to play on the board, and really makes me very salty. So definitely I recommend checking out this Burn Shaman list over here. So now, last but certainly not least, we've got Curse Warlock, which is a deck that I initially thought like wasn't very good, but as lists become more refined and as people like learn how to play this deck better, I think it's actually like low-key one of the best decks in the game at the moment. And I think a big pitfall when playing Curse Warlock is that people like just try to combo off from the beginning, and I think this is not like, while you can like combo and like OTK your opponent with the curses, I think the idea behind this deck is that you really just want to start like playing the curse cards as soon as possible, like these early game ones like the Cultist, and at least with like one drag below, just so you can start getting that curse number up. And then when you play these like curse cards in the mid game, like the Zakul or the Abyssal Wave, that makes these curses just deal more damage, so your opponent has to waste mana to play them, because the damage just becomes more taxing. And then if you want to sort of like combo out your opponent in the late game, we have many ways to do that. You could play Bram with like a Cultist if you save one for the late game. You could do a lot of dirty things with the Queen of Jara. I'll often go like Bran with the Queen of Jara. Unfortunately, at the moment, there's a bug where like it causes your opponent to disconnect. I don't know if it happens every game, but it does happen. But being able to get 2 of the I believe the Ring Treasure off of Queen of Jara, which basically it allows you to cast your last played spell for 1 mana, getting 2 of those, and then like weaving in like either a Drag Below or Abyssal Wave, and then throwing like a Tamsin on top of that, allows you to just get like all of these curses into your opponent's hand. And if you've been playing like some of these cards like throughout the game, then you could just like OTK them in a turn. But I think what really makes this deck so good at the moment is that we actually have like the tools to deal with some of these like early game scam boards, like with the Thief Rogue, as well as the Naga Hero Power Mage that I was talking about with, you know, like again, we got like the Touch of the Nathrezim as well as the Drained Soul that you can weave with like a Tamsin in those board-based matchups where, you know, you might not need all like the Curse OTK stuff. But I think even beyond that, Abyssal Wave, it's not very good, but the Entitled Customer is absolutely nuts against some of those board-based decks, because the Entitled Customer, when played on curve, if you have like a nice hand size, you could basically just clear up any sort of board. Overall, I'm very hyped on Curse Warlock. I'm starting to play the list more. I'm starting to like really learn it, and I've been doing very well with it on ladder. And this is a Languagehacker's list, by the way, which I think is the best one out there. So I think this deck is definitely worth the time to pick up and learn, and I could see it getting a lot better as people start mastering it even more. And with that, these are what I think are the best decks in the game post balance patch at the moment. Again, just to recap, we've got the Thief Rogue that's sort of dictating things at the moment, the Charge Warrior that's really just farming the Thief Rogues as well as other board-based decks, the Mech Paladin, which is just obnoxious for you know, the Warriors and other control decks to deal with, the Naga Hero Power Mage that is just obnoxious for most decks to deal with it because they just can't deal with those boards, except again if you are a burn shaman, because you could just keep freezing boards and just locking decks out of the game and then like burning them down. Really scammy stuff. Then of course the Curse Warlock, which I feel like is just a really good deck that's like underplayed at the moment because people are still learning it, but it's definitely packing some power in its pocket. If you guys want to see any videos on these decks, definitely let me know down in the comments, and also let me know what decks you are playing, what you think is good. And of course, you know, if you made it this far, like and subscribe, because you know you made it to the end of the video. You're probably digging something I'm doing here. But anyways, guys, keep staying the superior people. I know you all are, and you know, I'll catch you next one later. Dirt.